Welcome to chapter 3 of my book, Has the Church Fallen Under a Curse, and If the Whole Congregation Sins? I'm redoing chapter 3. The first time I recorded this, I made a couple of mistakes calling Jews Christians, and I didn't mean to do that. So to avoid any confusion, I'm just going to redo this segment again. So let's get to it. Christian leaders have repeatedly persecuted the Jews over the centuries, but today very few know about it. They report great things done to advance Christianity through people such as Augustine, Constantine, Luther, and others, and rightly so. Yet somehow they leave out the segments of the persecution and torture of the Jews by those very people. When instructors of history come to the part of the anti-Semitism, the burning, the murdering of the Jews, it's strangely left out, not there, ignored, not mentioned, not known. This cannot be by accident that such information is not being included in our textbooks and the courses that we take in our training. Unless the Jews experience a difference in the attitude of Christianity today, they will never really understand that we are not the same as our forefathers. They give us a break now again then and say, well, maybe, and then all of a sudden we do something, say something that's anti-Semitic or along those lines and drive them further away. You see, for far too many Jews still hear the echo of their blood-crazed captors singing hymns about the Messiah, Jesus, outside the walls as they suffered inside. Let me give you an example. For the Jews, it was the first time many heard them sing a carol, but time would not erase the memory of the occasion. The tune was Christ We Adore Thee. The event was the first crusade in 1099 when 969 Jews lost their lives. The Jews, fearing for their lives, locked themselves in their synagogue for safety, but to no avail. The Crusaders cremated them, building and all. An event familiar to most Westerners is the Spanish Inquisition. Let's look at that one. Protestant Christians and Jews know of this time, and we've all heard about the Spanish Inquisition. We don't really know what it means, but we've heard the term. It is a time when both Christians and Jews in history were tortured and murdered. So this book and this writing is not to tell of other sins against believers or how we've been persecuted, because that's usually going to be the argument. But this is more serious because the Jews are God's special chosen people. But I want to reveal how we, believers, have mistreated the Jews. The Catholic and Protestant distinction did not exist at the time of the Apostolic Fathers, and the term church was used to refer to both Catholic and Protestant churches alike. It all started out as Catholic, and then there was a breakaway. This book, this study, will not spend time telling of the Protestant split from the Catholic Church or judge who's a Christian, who is right, who is not, who is wrong. And it's because these religious differences that we have were not forefront in the mind of the Jew, forced to accept Jesus and to deny his Jewish culture and heritage. History does show where Catholics and Protestants both uttered words of condemnation and hate towards the Jews. Very few Christians know that when Constantine united the three major streams of religion in 323, he did so with a hatred for the Jew, a strike against us as Christians and our heritage. When most of us here, I know when I first heard of Constantine in the Bible college 45 years ago, and that he became a Christian and united Christianity we cheered. We were happy. We thought, yay, praise God. Now he stopped the persecution and making Christianity popular. He went forward with a cross as his symbol and banner as a result of a vision he received to conquer in the power of the cross. However, the part of his turning on the Jews is hardly ever told, and most often do not even know that this happened. Our church leaders and church history is leaving this part out. Prior to Constantine, many were persecuted for being Christian. He turned things around in a few years by actually forcing men and women, especially Jews, to become Christian at the point of a sword. So, this was soon to be the yawning mouth of the spiritual death that preceded the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages represent several centuries of spiritual darkness in the heart of humanity. And it actually rose from the state of the corrupted church. The people were forbidden to read the Bible, which they wrote in Latin only, and was available only to the priesthood, who they felt were worthy to read the Bible. Now, there's always a faithful remnant and few here and there, so we're not saying there was never someone, somewhere, some people, and we see that in church history, who moved in miraculous power of God and ahead of their time. So we're not going to take time and mention them right now, but we're going to say that no one can bypass the cross of redemption and make heaven their home without going through the cross. Popularizing the gospel at the point of a sword or through compromising standards will not win the approval of God, who writes the name of their name in the book of life. Jews and Gentiles alike must be born again. Jesus said, "Marvel not, I say unto you, you must be born again." John 3:7. Now, during this time of persecution, the power of the gospel was ebbing away. We know it started out powerful in the book of Acts, but then all of a sudden, less and less power, less and less evidence. The church had never come back to its full triumphant, glorious power that it had in the time of the book of Acts. Does God care what happened? Yes. Does God care about the power and purity of the church? Yes. Does he care about the countless souls now lost in eternity and suffering in hell? Absolutely. Let's read, "Don't say anything, but have you heard?" According to an old legend, as Jesus was on his way to be crucified, a Jewish man either struck or rebuffed Jesus, the Son of God, some way. As a result of his irreverence, they say the Lord condemned him to wander the earth until Christ's second coming. Let me read from Yvonne Glickson's book, Wandering Jew. Here's a paragraph that says, "Just a harmless legend, right? Not quite. First, countless thousands of people, especially in medieval Europe, actually believed this story. On numerous occasions, people reported meeting the Wandering Jew in person. He was alleged to have been seen in 1223 by some pilgrims passing through Armenia. He supposedly made an appearance at a church in Germany in 1542. Now that's almost 300 years later. And according to the local traditions, he was also sighted in Lubeck in 1603, in Paris in 1604, in Brussels in 1640, Leipzig 1642, Munich 1721, and London 1818. The different names by which he had been known include Ahasuerus, Cartaphilus, Buddhidius, and a few names that I can't pronounce, Votado, Juan, Esperadios, Indios. These are just a few of the names that they gave him. The anti-Semitic imagination was very creative. A famous German book written about the wandering Jew based on supposed visit to a church in 1542 was translated or paragraphed into French, Danish, Estonian, and Italian writing. Interest for them in such a story as this illustrates the church's viewpoint on that era towards the Jewish people. The Jews as a nation were considered guilty of the crucifixion of Jesus. Therefore they must be continually made to wander around the world, around the earth, destitute and homeless. Their persecutors and their persecution was to be a constant witness to the truth of the gospel message. Their persecutors, however, justified their behavior on a misrepresentation of biblical account of the crucifixion. We know that Jesus came to die. It was God's will, and Jesus himself said, "But for this hour I came," John 12:27. It was from the foundation of the earth Christ willingly laid down his life. And in Acts 4:26-27 it declares the whole world was involved at the crucifixion of Jesus, not just the Jew. The Jews rejected Jesus. He came to them preaching the gospel of the kingdom. Today we preach the fullness of the gospel. The gospel of the kingdom will be picked up again in the tribulation, and as God deals with the Jews again in a direct way and fulfills his promises that he made to them. The Jews rejected Jesus as their king and Messiah, and we were grafted in this day of grace. Some Jews, of course, were key players in the crucifixion, and most of the disciples deserted him at the time. But it was the sin of the heart of mankind that was the real cause of his death. The story of the wandering Jew, however, serves the anti-Semites well and accomplishes the purpose they desire. What is that? Well, it's the Jews are cursed and Christians are blessed. We have all the toys and you can't have any. These childish attitudes have grown into monsters of hatred, prejudice, affecting the spirit and souls of everyone involved. Now I read from Brown, "Our hands are stained with blood." Here's the paragraph. Now the story of the wandering Jew should show us something Satan has known for a long time. If you tell ridiculous, impossible, hateful, venomous lies, if you tell them long and loud enough, especially if they are about the Jews, much of the church, along with the rest of the world, will believe you. Thoughts can kill. That's our next heading there. Thoughts can kill. On a later occasion, some heard another rumor and thought it was true. They allowed gossip and whispering to fan into a burning hatred and acted upon what they reasoned was the trouble. Once again the Jews would feel the persecution, the sword, the buffeting of the church. Even when a Jew embraces Christ, it was difficult for them to feel comfortable in a system that allowed such a thing to be happening. There is only trouble and hypocrisy waiting for Christians who sweep things under the rug with their theological broom. You cannot pretend something never happened. It solves nothing. That only causes the offender to live a life of guilt, trying to silently ignore it, and it causes the offended party to live with the pain. In the Middle Ages, the Black Death ravaged Europe, wiping out about 1/3 of Europe's entire population. Rumor blamed the Jews without regard to the fact that the Black Plague also killed a multitude of Jews. So just how were the Jews supposed to have executed such a wide-ranging plan of destruction and bring forth it in the form of a plague? How did the Jews do it? Well, they said it was that the Jews secretly contaminated their wells with poisonous mixtures of spiders, lizards, and the hearts of Christians mixed together with the sacred elements of the Lord's Supper. As a result, thousands of Jews were butchered by angry mobs, while the Jewish children under the age of 7, whose families were murdered, were taken, baptized, and reared as Christians. So what was the proof that the Jews were guilty? Some of them confessed to the crime under severe tortures. Otherwise, there was no evidence at all for such an accusation. Yes, thoughts can kill. Thoughts can kill when they are consumed, and to the point that we go from acting as Christians to becoming instruments of the devil himself. The backslider in his heart is filled with his own way, Proverbs 14:14. Christianity has long believed men such as Bernard of Clairvaux, Peter the Venerable, and Pope Innocent III to be friends of the Jews. However, let's look at that. Let's look at their treatment of the Jews during their lifetime to determine if the facts that they tell us support their praise. Bernard is said to have been one of the most influential monks who ever lived, and he changed things, and he charged the whole Jewish people. So Bernard said that the whole Jewish people are as stupid, bestial, and more than bestial, and intelligent, coarse, dense, as it were bovine, because they did not follow the Lord. They were an evil seed. There was nothing in them that was not crude or coarse. That's what he said. Whether we consider their occupation, their inclinations, their understanding, or even their rites with which they worship God, they were in our race who have not God as their father, but are of the devil, and were murderers, as he was a murderer from the beginning. So this is a classic example of misquoting the words of Jesus. What did Jesus say? He said, "You are of your fathers the devil," John 8:44, when speaking to the Jews. But let's look at the context. What is the context of that saying when Jesus said that? What Jesus said and what he meant was that anyone who acted the way the particular crowd did behaved as children of the devil. He did not declare that they were the actual offspring of the devil. He just said they were acting like the devil. Peter the Venerable. Let's read, maybe he did better. Well, let's look. Peter the Venerable was known as the meekest of men, a model of Christian charity, and a most loving, peaceful man, a contemporary of Bernard. He spoke the following things about his fellow man, the Jews. And I quote him, You Jews, I say, do I address you, you who till this very day deny the Son of God? How long, poor wretches, will you not believe the truth? Truly, I doubt whether a Jew can really be a human. I lead out from its den a monstrous animal, and show it as a laughing stock on the amphitheater of the world, in the sight of all the people. I bring forward, thou Jew, thou brute beast, in the sight of men. Well, maybe Pope Innocent III had something nice to say. I mean, Pope Innocent, that'd be a nice title to have. You're a pope and you're innocent. Pope Innocent III, once called the protector of the Jewish people. He said they were to be condemned to perpetual slavery because they crucified the Lord. This is what he says. The Jews against whom the blood of Jesus Christ calls out, although they ought not to be killed, lest the people forget the divine law, Yet as wanderers ought they to remain upon the earth until their countenance be filled with shame. According to Malcolm Hay, trade boycott, social ostracism, expulsion from all offices of authority and trust were to be the chief economic weapons Pope Innocent was able to use effectively against them. This following account will move the coldest indifferent heart to agree that no human being should suffer such a shameful display of religious madness as in the charge of desecrating the host. In 1215, the Fourth Lateran Council accepted the position of transubstantiation as official church dogma. This dogma asserted that the wafer used in the Mass was miraculously transformed into the body of Jesus. This Catholic belief of their doctrine of transubstantiation led to the torture and murder of thousands of Jews. This is due to a strange belief that since Jesus brought his life through the wafer, he is brought to life through the wafer. Would not the Jews who had once crucified him wish to torture and kill him again? Because the Catholics believe that that wafer actually turns into flesh of Jesus, in spite of it tasting, crunching, and being eaten like a cracker, like a wafer. In 1243, Berlin's entire Jewish community was burned alive for allegedly torturing a wafer, and thereby desecrating the host. Now that was in 1243. Here's 1389 in Prague. In 1389 in Prague, the Jewish community was collectively accused of attacking a monk carrying a wafer. Large mobs of Christians surrounded the Jewish neighborhood and offered the Jews the choice of baptism or death. Refusing to be baptized, 3,000 Jews were murdered. Now in 1510 in Berlin, 26 Jews were burned and 2 beheaded for reportedly desecrating the host. A charge of host desecration was reported as recent as 1836 that I'm aware of. So we can see it's still going on, or was right up until 1836. Blood libel, that's our next heading there. This is the third heading down. Probably the most widespread anti-Jewish lie told and believed through the ages has been the charge of ritual murder. The story was always the same. A group of Jews kidnapped a Christian child. It's often before Easter. They tortured him, killed him, often by crucifixion, and more times than not drank the blood. The remaining blood was used for making Passover matzah, and they used it in their unleavened bread. They used the blood. As anticipated, the only evidence for the crime was always the same. Jews under torture confessed. These tellers of lies failed to speak of the all too real custom of the Gentile persecutions performed in some of the Jews on Easter. That consisted of seeking out Jews and bringing them or him or her, whoever, into the church and beheading him. On one such occasion, the Jew was beaten to death. April 26, 1343. A ritual murder accusation is raised against the Jews in Gersheim, Germany. Thereupon the whole entire Jewish community is burned at stake. Only God knows how many Jews lost their lives because of this infamous blood libel. The numbers are surely in the magnified, multiplied thousands. And God only knows how many people, Muslim, atheist, Christian, believe this lie today. In the 1960s and 70s, the blood of libel was spread by the leading financial figure of the Arab world, the great or the late King Faisal of Saudi Arabia. On a number of occasions, Faisal informed newspaper interviewers that the Jews annually celebrated Passover by murdering a non-Jew and consuming their blood. Can you imagine that? Life for the Jews in the days of Isabella of Spain. We're now to learn a term unfamiliar to many today, one that will bring many mixed emotions to the Israeli people. The term is Marranos or Conversos or New Christians. The focus of the Spanish Inquisition in the 14th century was to break the back of the Jewish faith and culture. The Jews who converted were known as Marranos or Conversos. During this time, the Catholic Church sent out a decree to hunt down all Jews and force them to convert. Hunt them down. They were then made to march through the streets half naked, on their way to receive Christ. The Jewish converts were then required to live by certain diabolical rules and closely watched. These rules would be different for any nationality or race to accept. But how much worse and how much more an insult were they for the Jews? The Jews were ordered not to become involved in any practices of heresy. What were those practices? Well, they had to eat pork. They were made to eat pork. And failure to work on Saturday was a heresy. So they made them work on Saturday and eat pork. We know that back in 1996, a young Jewish man lost a chess tournament because he would not record his moves on Saturday. As some may know, the Jewish custom forbids even answering a phone on Saturday for some of the Jew sect. And yet they were ordered to work and eat pork. Failure to wear one's best on Sunday. Keeping the biblical feast was forbidden, observing Jewish custom of any kind, saying any Jewish prayers, preparing food according to the Jewish law, associating with non-baptized Jews, and marrying with other children of Marrano families was forbidden. The Jews who were to convert after giving it some thought were to undergo an act of penance called vengunes, or shame. Men and women alike were to walk through the streets bareheaded, barefooted, and naked from the waist up. The monks would lead them often in cruel physical discomfort that was being added to their mental torture, and the weather was often raw and cold, that it had been considered expedient to provide them with sandals, lest they should have found it impossible to even walk. These Jews had to hold unlit candles in their hands, indicating that they were not yet in spiritual darkness, and were marched through the city until they arrived at the cathedral. A chaplain would make the sign of the cross on the foreheads of the Jews, many of whom had been promised citizens and respected leaders of their city before the Jew hate craze erupted. And then the Jew would recite these words as the monk spoke them. Receive the sign of the cross which you denied, and which, being deluded, you lost. They then would receive their sentence. The Jews would then be sentenced.